member of WildGamesProductions.com and D20Radio.com.
Welcome to the Save or Die podcast, a podcast about classic Dungeons and Dragons.
Hi folks, DM Glen here, the Save or Die podcast, and we today are interviewing Mr. Geoffrey McKinney, who is the author of Carcosa, a weird science fantasy horror setting, and The Isle of the Unknown. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. Yeah, thank you.
I got some advanced copies of this, and I've got to say these books look gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
What Jim Radji and Lamentations did with it, it's like, wow, these look better than my D&D books.
Yeah, when I got my author's copies in January, and I was just blown away by them. I knew they were going to look nice, but I think they both look just... I think they could hold up against any book by any publisher for, the role-playing field. And of the two, Isle of the Unknown, I think, is even better than Carcosa, just, in terms of its visual appeal.
Oh, yes. I mean, it really stands out. I was at North Texas RPG Con, and they had a few copies there, and it's like, wow, that just, catches your eye. The Carcosa book was, almost library binding.
Oh, yes. It's so deluxe.
Yeah, it looks like it could survive a nuclear bomb or something. The roaches will be role-playing Carcosa.
Well, I hope so,
Yeah, it's more residuals for you, yeah. So how did this all come about, this, Carcosa? And, I kind of followed it a little bit on the boards. You were developing it, but where did the idea come from?
Well, in a sense, Carcosa has been with me since I started role-playing back in 1980 when I was 10 years old. I was in a group we ranged in age from about 9 to 13.
Oh, okay.
And we started with the Holmes-edited basic D&D set. And just about 3 months after that, I picked up a copy of the Advanced D&D Deities and Demigods book.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, and my 10-year-old mind was blown away.
I assume this is
Cthulhu thoughts.
Yeah, I was going to say this is probably first or second printing when they still had the Cthulhu stuff in there.
Yes, I bought it when it was brand new. See, in fact, I'd gone to the store that day with $12 in my pocket to buy the Player's Handbook. Uh-huh. And, a week or two before that, Deities and Demigods didn't exist. And so when I showed up and there it was, I was like, oh, Player's Handbook, forget it. I picked up the Deities and Demigods. And, looking through there, seeing Errol Otis's awesome Cthulhuid illustrations, and a couple of things that really just impressed me. Mm-hmm. Again, I was 10 years old at the time. You look through these gods, and every one but one, chaotic evil. Then you look in the back. What kind of sacrifice do they require? Human, every single one. And so ever since then, human sacrifice and Cthulhuid entities and, weird summoning spells have been a part of our D&D games. But it was in 2004 that I really sat down and said, hey, wouldn't it be neat to have a D&D campaign where this sort of thing wasn't just one ingredient along with, orcs and elves and everything else, but rather this was the main attraction. And so then I just, started from that idea, and over the course of years kept winnowing away. It's like, well, this doesn't belong, so I'd throw it out of the game. This doesn't belong, throw it out of the game. Well, this would be cool, so I'd add it into the game. And over the years, people are, I'd talk about it on Dragon Split and other places. They'd say, why don't you publish this? And I was like, no, I'm not going to publish it. I'm just telling you about my game. But they kept saying it, and then finally one day, it just clicked in my mind how I could make it work as a published book. And I published it out of my house in October of 2008. I just printed it on my own printer, did everything right here in my house, drove over to the, every time I get an order, I'd print another copy and drive down to the post office. And
Right.
after a while, sales slowed down. And then my printer broke, and I said, well, it's not worth buying a new printer because the sales are slow at this point.
Right.
And not too long afterwards, James Raji says, hey, why don't you let me publish it? And we did.
Rest is history.
Yeah.
Wow. And so was Isle of the Unknown kind of an offshoot of this?
Not at all.
Part of the campaign? Okay.
No. Isle of the Unknown is a completely different campaign. One of the things I want to do as a role-playing author, and, God alone knows how many books I'll ever publish. Maybe just 2. I don't know. But one of my goals is to never just publish a rehash of something I'd already written. The last thing I wanted to do with Isle of the Unknown was make, oh, look, Carcosa, take 2. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'd already done Carcosa. There's Carcosa, and all we have to do is look at George Lucas and the prequels and the special editions. Like, sometimes it's best just to leave well enough alone. Don't revisit it. Don't, quote-unquote, improve it. Don't try to change it. Just leave it. There it is. That's Carcosa. This is Carcosa. And that'll always be Carcosa. There's never going to be any, serious changes to it. Isle of the Unknown is completely different style and type of campaign. With Isle of the Unknown, the horror element basically isn't really there. The sci-fi element really isn't there. It's more of a standard D&D campaign. The single biggest difference is that the players, what they encounter in the Isle of the Unknown, none of it is going to be anything they've ever seen before. Like in my own games, when the players would explore the Isle of the Unknown, we just used the standard D&D rules, magic users and clerics and all that stuff. But they never encountered an orc. They never encountered an elf or a red dragon or a +1 sword. And whereas the players might have, say, a magic missile spell, all of the spellcasters that they would encounter would have unique powers that they'd never encountered before. And one of the big reasons I really wanted to do this is I kind of wanted to recapture what it felt like to play D&D when you'd never played it before. When we first played D&D, you'd see, say, a blue dragon. And then when it would breathe lightning, you're like, whoa, it breathes lightning. I had no idea it would do that. Okay. Or most of all, the troll. You'd see a troll, and you start hacking it to bits, and its head is bouncing along the ground trying to bite you. What the devil? How do we deal with this? And you'd eventually learn, fire and acid. So the second time, and the third time, and the 30th, and the 100th time you'd encounter a troll, it wasn't quite the same thing as that first time. And the same with spells and magic spells and magic items. So with Isle of the Unknown, I'm trying to make it seem like it's all new, like you've never played before.
That's great. That's great. Because they're kind of similar in their setup. That's why I asked you. Because most of the area of Carcosa is a hex crawl.
I see, yes.
And so Isle came off as the same way, except each one had a unique monster with it. I mean, I'm not saying the other one didn't, but that's the way it came off. In fact, when I first got these books, I read through them, and I was kind of like, because, to me, it just seemed like a hodgepodge in my head. But then I reread it, and I clicked in my mind what you were getting at.
Yeah, well, an inspiration for both of them, maybe not necessarily in terms of content, but in terms of the structure, is the old Judges Guild's rules.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes. Because I've got a whole collection of Judges Guild, and I look back at a couple of those, I go, oh yeah, okay, I got it.
Exactly. These are supposed to basically be latter-day Judges Guild Wilderlands-style supplements for the game. My only problem with the Judges Guild Wilderlands is that there's not enough of it.
Yeah.
These huge maps, and I think they had like 1,600 hexes per map, and not all of the hexes had something in it. And so you'd go to hex, say, 0712. You look on 0712. Nothing. Oh, I wish there was something there. So it was important to me in both of my products that for every land-based hex, of course, Isle of the Unknown, there's some pure oceanic hexes. I just ignored those. But for every land-based hex, that there's at least one point of interest that so when the referee is just kind of doing a seat-of-the-pants game and they're crawling around the map, no matter where they go, he has at least something he can run with, and develop or go off in any direction he wants.
And it shows you how much the game has changed, because a lot of people were going, everywhere I step, I'm going to get killed. There's something there. And I looked and I go, no, look, it's like so many square miles. That's just one little feature.
Exactly. I mean, I think most people, and gamers included, we really don't have an accurate idea of what distance is. Mm-hmm. I grew up in the Colorado mountains, and I would hike, and the area I would hike is maybe 10 square miles. And that always seemed vast to me. I never felt like, I'm in this cramped little area. And I would even get lost sometimes, kind of, in that 10 square miles. Well, think about it. In both of these books, there are 80-something square miles in each and every hex.
Right.
So even just a single hex is a vast tract of wilderness. And so the chance of just randomly encountering any of these points of interest would be not even 1%. Okay. I mean, you could, like for example, in Isle of the Unknown with some of those statues, you could probably, in real life, explore an area of wilderness, 86 square miles in extent, and never find the statue that someone had put in there.
Right.
So really, they're just there in case the DM needs something.
Yeah. And I loved it. And once I got it, I loved it, because it's like he's saying, it's here. Put something else in there if you want.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there is absolutely no way anyone could exhaustively detail, the maps in these two books. It would be an encyclopedia set.
Yeah, it'd be huge.
Yeah, just impossibly so, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I got to ask this question.
Sure.
Have you had any trouble with Arkham House or Chaosium over the Cthulhu stuff in Carcosa?
No, I have never received any communications or even the merest hint of communication from them. No, and when you look at it's kind of murky. The copyright status of Lovecraft stuff is it's murky, but I think arguably the finest living Lovecraft scholar is S.T. Joshi, and he has written an essay addressing this copyright status of Lovecraft stories. And he comes to the conclusion that basically all of them, maybe with the exception of half a dozen or so, but basically all of Lovecraft's stories are in the public domain. So that means anybody can do anything they want with them. And I notice Lovecraftian stuff all over the place. In fact, you can go on the internet, a number of sites, and get the full text of all of Lovecraft's stories for free. So I think that de facto, if nothing else, nobody owns these characters or concepts or stories. They're just for all of us. Okay,
cool. Because I really hate to see you get a C&D, because this is just too good of stuff.
Yeah, well, it's been 4 years, since the initial publication. Then with James Raji's, it's been half a year. I would think that if there was going to be something, it would have happened a long time ago.
True. Now, the mechanics, the way you work hit points and damage, was that a development out of your campaign?
Yes, in fact, what it was a development out of was a giant box of dice I bought. There was a giant box of old-fashioned dice. They were opaque, solid-colored, not the fancy stuff. The type of thing that I would have seen at the game store back when I started in 1980.
Yeah. Dragon dice, yes.
Yeah, and it was actually 512 dice. It was like for $20 or something crazy. I said, just for the nostalgia value, I'm going to buy this. So I bought the box of dice. And so I just looked at them and stuff. Well, it's kind of fun, but it's kind of sad just to have a box of dice sitting there. I got to get these in on the game somehow. And so that was the genesis of how I came to rolling handfuls of dice with Carcosa. And I have to say, that's one of the most controversial parts of the book. Some people just say, oh, the whole thing's broken and unplayable because of it. It's like, well, it's really just a fun thing. If you like to roll a lot of dice, use that section of the book. Right. Nothing in the rest of the book, which is like 300 or close to 300 pages, nothing in the rest of the book depends upon the dice ideas that are included in the front of the book, which is maybe 4 or 5 pages.
Yeah.
So just ignore it if you want.
Okay, yeah, that's what I said. I mean, save or die, I'm always going. It's modular, folks. It's modular. Use what you want.
Oh, yeah, both of these books, totally modular. There is no one thing in either of these books that you have to use. Any and everything can be easily taken out, and the other parts will still work just fine.
Oh, yeah. And, like what you said. It's just that some people look at that and go, God, this is going to take a long time to resolve an encounter. Well, I'm sure it would at first, but if you got used to it, I mean, there's people who play Rollmaster who can do an encounter in like 5 minutes with all the charts and everything. So yeah, once you use it, you know what's going on. It should be all right.
Yeah. In my own experience, it takes no more or less time. It's just the same as playing standard D&D.
Okay.
Like you said, you just get used to it, and then instead of grabbing a single die, you just regularly grab one of each sort of die and roll them all.
Yeah, drop them on there, see what happens. Look at the chart.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And going on. I'm going to ignore the part about ascending armor class.
Yeah, in the original publication of Carcosa, I did not use ascending armor class. It was explicitly written as a supplement for the 1974 D&D.
Okay.
And simply because James Radji is publishing it, and his game is the Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and it uses ascending armor class. We just tweaked it and changed those numbers and a couple of other little cosmetic things, but it's basically the exact same book. And I always play using the 1974 D&D rules.
Right.
And to me, whether you're playing using that or any form of D&D that was published before 2000 or any of the retro clones,
right.
If you have any experience at all, it's all the same game.
Yeah. I've been thinking of using at least parts of it for some of my stuff, and I use Rule Cyclopedia, Metzer.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm sure it'll have no problem fitting right in there.
None at all.
No. Okay. Here's kind of a related question. Well, I'll ask you anyway. What RPG rule set do you think this fit best?
I don't think there's any one, honestly. Well, I'll tell you, the reason my favorite is the 1974 D&D rules is it's so slender and it's so vague. It's just so easy. It's second nature for me to use, and we almost never have to look up anything in a book except a hit table or a saving throw table. So I just say, whichever form of 20th century D&D you play, or whatever retro clone thereof, whichever one you're most comfortable with, that's the one that's going to work best with.
Okay, I'm sure Liz would love to hear that. That, and if you put kobolds back in the game.
I think probably the single biggest difference between Carcosa and standard D&D is one of the weaknesses to me of standard D&D is how long it can take before the players get to the good stuff.
Right.
I mean, they're like those 9th level spells. I mean, if you look at what Gary Gygax used to say, and if you were to play D&D every single week with the exact same character, and this character never got killed, and he never got level drained, it would take close to a decade before your first level magic user, close to 10 years before your first level magic user could finally cast a 9th level spell.
Wow.
Now imagine if you're an adult like us, and instead of playing every week, maybe you're only playing every month. Wow, okay, now we're talking 40 years. Are we even going to be alive? I mean, literally, not our characters, us. We might be dead. We might be dead before we can play. Okay, so that's something to consider about standard D&D. With Carcosa, there is nothing that a first-level character can't potentially use. All of the sorceress rituals, there's 96 in the book. Every single one, if the character goes and acquires the material components and acquires the knowledge to perform that ritual, he can do it. There's rituals not in the book. Say a ritual to summon Cthulhu. A first-level character can do it. There's really powerful high-tech items. A first-level character could find those things. The psionics. First-level characters have psionics.
I've got to tell you, by the way, sorry to interrupt, but I got to tell you, that's the best psionic system I've ever seen.
Oh, thank you.
Short to the point, boom. I loved it.
To me, it's the only D&D psionic system that I've seen that I can actually use. The rest, I mean, I can kind of understand them when I'm sitting there reading, say, the Player's Handbook for advanced D&D, but try to actually get me to use it in a game, and suddenly it doesn't make sense to me. I just can't do it. I'm flipping in the book, trying to scratch in my head. So I really wanted a psionic system that anybody, easy, without any effort at all, could use.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way it should be. I mean, to me, that's, in your world, that's the substitute for a magic system.
Kind of is, yeah.
Yeah. You may have psionics, you may not. You may have something at the day, you may have something different the next day, you know.
Right.
Cool. I can live with that. And I hope the players can, too. So, now, the artwork in here, I really liked in both books. Especially Carcosa, because I'm a sucker for, like, black and white line art. And some of the stuff, it's just so intricate and beautiful. Did you have any input on who the artists were, or did you pick any out, or did Jim do that, or?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I've read about world-class authors. I don't know, like Stephen Jay Gould. I mean, my goodness, he was on bestsellers lists. He'd sell more copies of a book in one day than I'll sell in my entire life of all my titles put together. And he had no control over anything in his books except the words.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's typical. An author typically never has any say or input over what the cover's going to look like, what the cover's going to say. Sometimes he doesn't even have any input over the title. And so when James contacted me and wanted to publish Carcosa and Isle of the Unknown, I thought I was going to be done when I sent him the manuscripts, basically. I thought I was going to send him the manuscripts, wait a while, and then get the completed books in the mail. But no, it was the exact opposite. He was so awesome to work with on everything, on every aspect of these books. He gave me options. It was very important to him that the books reflected my vision, and I really appreciate that. So he and I exchanged hundreds of emails going back and forth. We had artist tryouts for each of these. Yeah, for each of these books, and when there was James and I through going back and forth with emails, we would usually come to the same conclusion eventually on any given thing. But occasionally we would just have a difference of opinion about something, and I always got the final say on it. It was really cool.
Cool. That is great, because even in Isle of the Unknown, I like the color work in there too. I mean, every single animal is like, wow.
Yes. That was my idea. There's two monsters in the monster manual, advanced D&D monster manual, that almost no one has ever heard of or used, and those are the Slithering Tracker and the Masher. I remember on Dragon's Foot, somebody was talking about the Masher, and I was like, the Masher? What? I've never even heard of that.
I've never even heard of it. I got to go back and look at my books.
But yeah, it's crazy. And do you know why?
Why?
It's because they don't have illustrations. We just glide right over it.
That's true.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I had this idea. I woke up in the early morning one morning, as when we were, in process, getting these books put together, and it just occurred to me. It's like, whoa, all of these monsters in Isle of the Unknown are unique. No one's ever seen one like it before, and I don't want them to end up like the poor old Masher and the Slithering Tracker. So I emailed James. I said, hey, is there any way possible we could put a picture of each and every monster in? And he emailed back. He says, no way. That is way too expensive. I said, yeah, I thought so. But it was a dream. I had to try. And later that day, he says, wait a minute. We might be able to make this work. And an artist that does a lot of art for James and his other projects, Amos Stearns, he's the one that did all of the monster art for Isle of the Unknown. And because there's like 130 of them or something like that.
He did all of them?
Every single one. So we basically got a bulk rate. See, he charged less per monster than if we had just asked him to do 5 or 6, because we asked him to do every single one. And then James took that one notch up, because he says, Jeff, you make a lot of use of color in this book. We got to get him to do full color. I'm like, well, all right. So that's what happened with those monsters.
I'm starting to think that, where does he live, Iceland or...
Finland.
I'm starting to think he gets really good printers rates in Finland for the stuff he puts out. I'm looking at Isle of the Unknown right now, and it says the artists are Amos Stearns, Jason Rainville, and Cynthia Shepard.
Jason Rainville, and it was James Radji's idea. I have 13. There's several dozen mages on the island, but 13 of them are astrologically themed. And James had the idea, hey, let's have a full-page illustration of each of the astrologically themed mages.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and so I really worked a lot with the artist on that one, because I had to make sure that Jason Rainville, that he understood that, hey, when you're illustrating these, never just put in any old tree or any old foliage or any old flower. Every single thing you see, like for example, right now I'm looking at the Leo magic user. Every single thing, for example, in that illustration is tied in somehow with the sign of Leo. Every single astrological sign has stones and colors and trees and flowers and herbs and smells associated with it. So I said, make sure everything about that illustration is Leo, and then the same for all the rest. And I think you just hit it out on the park.
I'm looking at the plates now, and they're absolutely gorgeous. I mean, the creatures themselves aren't bad, but these things are like, TSR wish they could have plates like this in the day.
Oh, yeah, you're exactly right. And then with Cynthia Shepard, she has also worked with James Radji in the past. For example, she did the illustration, the cover illustration of his game, of the Flame Princess fighting that Type 5 demon.
Yep.
Yeah, and so so James had the idea. I think it's like Hex 12 something. 1209. He says, I want Hex 1209 to be the cover. And so he got Cynthia Shepard to do that. And she it's just beautiful. It for my money, it's the single most beautiful role-playing cover I've ever seen. And the only change I had to ask her to make to it, she originally had the statue with cracks on it, like it was like an old, ruined, weathered statue. But that was my fault. I was... sometimes you get too close to something, and I just thought the whole world knew that, hey, all these magical statues aren't weathered. And so when she came back with the first go at it, I was like, oh, just get rid of those cracks, and it's perfect otherwise.
Well, it's like I said, that thing really stands out. I mean, on a shelf. Put this in a game store and it'll move. Man, oh man. So they've just gorgeous with this thing. Okay, now, you've got, instead of like dwarves and elves and things like that, you've got colored men. As I put it, color-coded men.
Yes. And
did that come out of playtesting? Did that come out of your campaign also, or is that...
Oh, yeah. None of this. Well, basically, none of this stuff. No major aspect of either of these books was not used somehow in play. And there's just something that just really works for me with different colored skin. I don't know why.
Well, I think
and it goes back at least as far as Edgar Rice Burroughs with the green men and the yellow men and the red men of Mars, etc. And in fact, there wasn't enough colors, so I had to get David Lindsay to help me, who wrote A Voyage to Arcturus, and he has 3 imaginary colors in there: Dome, Oldfire, and Jail. So I also had those be colors on Carcosa? So you can play a human being with a skin color that literally no one can see or imagine.
I know. I was thinking, like, Jim was probably thankful that you didn't have any color in the inside of the books. How the heck are we going to do an Bullfire Man?
That's right. What do you do with that?
Yeah. But yeah, I like that. I like that aspect of it. I don't miss the elves and the dwarves and the hobbits. I really don't. With this kind of thing. I mean, it's Lovecraft with a layer of, like, Howard.
Yes.
And
yes.
Other things. In fact, as you know, like I saw on the board, somebody was doing the Carcosa wacky races.
Yes, I saw that.
Which I thought was brilliant. And that's when I went back to the book and it started getting me thinking, what else can I do if I don't agree with this, like, worldview, or I don't want this worldview? What can I do to, like, you know, change it and make it my own?
All right, exactly.
And I'm thinking of, like, you know, I want to like play down the Eldritch and push up the Gonzo.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like old Gamma World. At one point, I was thinking about doing like a He-Man or Thundar the Barbarian with the technology and the magic and all this other stuff.
Well, I'm right there with you, because when I first started my Carcosa campaign, you know what rules I used?
Which ones? If
you remember, in the first edition first edition Advanced D&D Dungeon Master's Guide.
Yeah.
There's a section in there called Mutants and Magic, I believe.
I remember that, yeah.
Or it was about blending the Gamma World and the Advanced D&D rules. That's exactly what I used when I started Carcosa. There's a huge influence of Gamma World on Carcosa.
Right. Some of our listeners and some of our hosts are going to think I'm going to be eating a little crow here, because I'm the most verbal opponent of modern technology aside from Black Powder in D&D. I don't like Expedition to the Barrier Peaks or anything like that. Do not put lasers in. Don't mix sci-fi with my fantasy. But this, I could just like jump in with both feet. Just because everything it works. It works for me.
Well, I think part of the reason for that, and in some ways I can agree with you, I don't want Gandalf having a laser pistol, you know. And Carcosa really goes to a pre-J.R.R. Tolkien layer of fantasy. It goes back to the 1920s Weird Tales with Lovecraft and Howard and Clark Ashton Smith. And back then, they didn't have a rigid demarcation between fantasy, horror, or sci-fi. And so it's really its own thing. It's not like I took two different things with Carcosa, like the Lord of the Rings plus something from Arthur C. Clarke and mixed them. No, instead I went back nearly 100 years and used that as my inspiration, and that's why I think it works without feeling discordant. And it's just like, well, this is weird. Why this just doesn't work.
Yeah, with D&D you put sci-fi in there. How many times are you going to go, oh, there's this stick that shoots a beam out? After about the third time, to go, yeah, we get it. It's a laser. All right, fine. You know, that kind of thing. But this is like such a hodgepodge. It's such a glorious hodgepodge. I love it. It's like Howard and Lovecraft and all this stuff. And I said, I'm going to take all this stuff and get a little Mad Max in there, because for some reason I think there's a lot of desert on Carcosa.
Yes, Carcosa in my mind is very rocky, very barren.
Yeah.
For the most part.
And take the whole thing and put it beyond Thunderdome.
Yeah.
It fires the imagination, just my imagination anyway. And so what's next for you?
You know, I really don't have anything on the table in terms of something I'm writing for publication. But one of the reasons that I wrote both of these two books is that there's just not enough of the stuff that I really like available out there. Right. There's so much stuff that's good, but just me personally, I have so much experience with standard D&D. If I want to play a game of standard D&D, I don't need anybody to help me out. You know, I have all that stuff memorized. I can do it in my sleep. So I don't need, for example, a module with, hey, let's go raid, a humanoid lair. There's goblins. Okay, I can do that myself. And so I wish that people would write more stuff that's all unique. And so what I'm soliciting, and I already have one manuscript that I've approved, and I hope for it to be published next month. I'm going to be publishing a line of self-publishing, a line of short adventures called psychedelic fantasies. And my rules, so to speak, for the authors is that, hey, if you can find it in a published book, I don't want to see it in in your manuscript. So whether it's a magic item or a monster or a magic spell, if it's been published, it doesn't belong in this. It needs to be all new stuff.
Right.
And they're going to be real cheap. They're going to be, in this sense, they're going to be like the opposite of these two books. These two books are just gloriously, beautiful. My books are going to go. These psychedelic fantasies are going to take an opposite approach, and they're going to be totally bare bones. They're not going to have any illustrations except for the map, and possibly something on the cover. I don't know yet. Okay. And so there's going to be text, and they're going to be like $5. And,
during the D20 era, there was something called Pulp Dungeons. It sounds kind of like that.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is the same thing, but I remember in the D20 era, there was these modules that were like folded the other way. They're 11 inches tall, but only like 4.5 inches wide.
Yes, Alderac put those out.
There you go.
I had
That's
a couple of them.
Yes, they're going to be like that in format.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and so. And each one's going to be about 8,000-9,000 words, and so each one's going to be something that you can just use, basically for a single one shot or maybe two. You know what I mean? And so it's going to be real inexpensive, and because of their format, I'm able to mail them very inexpensively. I'll be able to mail one anywhere in the United States for 45 cents. I can do an international mailing for $2.50.
Nice.
So yeah, so I hope that people can use these as something that's real cheap, real easy, but at the same time it's like, hey, it's not just more goblins and orcs and +3 swords. This is really different, wacky, crazy stuff.
Yeah, and if nothing, a lot of people will be picking it for ideas too. Exactly. Oh yeah. Let us know when you get ready to publish. We'd be happy to review it.
Okay, I certainly will.
Oh, that'd be great. And we can pick up Carcosa and Isle of the Unknown at Jim Radji's site.
Right? Yes, and that's right. You can also get them on various places on the internet. There's like Troll and Toad has them. Noble Knight Games has them. Okay. So if you live in the United States, you don't have to pay the shipping, from Finland. You can get them, with relatively low shipping here, and they're in distribution as well. They're at game stores. I couldn't give you a list, but they're at game stores in Europe and the United States for sure. I'm sure.
I have yet to see any copies in my game store, but then again, I'm in Oklahoma, so.
Right. Yeah, so all I know is that they are in distribution in the United States. They went into distribution in late March, I believe. Uh-huh. And so if anybody does want to support his local game store and order it from them, they should be able to order it no problem without having to contact James Radji. It should just be right there in their regular catalog. Right.
Absolutely right. Well, I feel like you and Jim are like two of the guys who just showed the OSR what you can do besides rehashing old stuff. Because since then, I went to North Texas RPG Con, I looked over at the Frog Gods games table, and they had these series called Hex Crawl Classics. Well, they put hex with stuff, and you crawl through it, or a series of hexes, and it's like, wow, that's just like what Jeff was doing.
Yes. Yeah, that's one of my hopes, is that more and more people will do the type of stuff that I really would like to buy. I'm too lazy to keep writing books. I want other people to write them so I can just pay for them.
Yep, it's easier to hand out money.
That's right. Oh yeah. I mean, it takes on each of these books, it probably took me 4 months to write. I mean, gee, I'd much rather hand over some money than spend 4 months of my life writing a book.
I hear you there. I've tried my hand at it, and not fun. You're gonna have to strip me naked and put me in a room with a computer, and that's it.
That's right. I love creating for D&D. I love just sitting down with blank paper and pencil and just doodling out things, maps and little notes and stuff. But of course, only I could really make heads or tails out of them, because it's not anything for other people to understand. And so to turn those notes into a publishable book that's rough. There's this one guy on Dragon's Foot, and he gently ribbed me and says, well, why don't you give this stuff away for free? There's plenty of really high quality stuff, out there in the old school Renaissance that they give away for free. So that's kind of his philosophy. Everything should be free. It should just all be free. And I say, well, you know what? There was never a choice between a free, Carcosa or Isle and a choice between a paid for one. It was always a choice between either a for-profit Carcosa and Isle of the Unknown or none at all, because there is no way I was going to go to all the unpleasant effort and work of putting these things in publishable, form.
Oh no!
And then just say, "Oh, here, it's free." Now, if anybody ever wants my notes for free, okay, come to my house. I'll let you have them.
It's like the PDF mindset of the internet these days. You just put it in a PDF and give it out for free.
It's too much work, and especially when I was printing Carcosa from my own house. This is pretty insane. It would take me probably close to 30 minutes for each copy. This is after I have the book written. It's done, right? So somebody would give me an order. I would go to my printer. I'd print that thing off. I'd have to fold all the pages in half by hand, and I have to make sure that they were folded really well, so it wasn't, all, cockeyed or anything. And then I'd have to. The one thing I couldn't do is I didn't have a stapler that was long enough or strong enough to get through all the pages. So then I'd drive it over to the print shop and pay them to put staples in it. And I also had to get the cardstock. I used the brown cardstock, so old D&D books. This is insane. I depleted 4 Hobby Lobbies of brown cardstock, and they never got any more. I'd beg them, just get this brown cardstock. This isn't a weird color. And you carried it anyway. Just get some more. I was driving from Pueblo to Colorado Springs. It's about an hour drive, to get this brown cardstock. Then I'd have to, buy the mailing packages, and then get everything, get the books all nice and secure in the mailing packages, then drive to the post office and mail these things. I'm not doing that for free. That's insane. So I always thought of it, you're not really paying for my book or my ideas. You're paying for the effort I have to share the book and the ideas with you.
The time and effort, right.
Because as far as I'm concerned, the ideas are yours. Even if you didn't buy the book, I would welcome anybody taking the concepts from Carcosa and or Isle of the Unknown, write your own stuff for it. Give that away for free. Or sell it. I don't care. I'm totally open about that. I'm not going to be all down on anybody for using my books and profiting off it. Good. Right. I hope somebody makes a mint off of Carcosa.
Cool. And, okay, last stupid question. Carcosa, it's a planet, right?
Yes.
Okay. I can't get the Isle of Carcosa out of my head.
No. So what it is, Carcosa is a planet in the Hyades cluster. That's a real cluster of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Okay. It's a little over 150 light years away from Earth.
Wow.
And so it's an alien world.
So you can actually run this with some sci-fi stuff if you accidentally land on it or something. Very nice.
Certainly. Then Isle of the Unknown. I only detailed the magical and wondrous aspects of the island. So you could literally fill in the mundane stuff with anything you wanted. It could be pre-Columbian Aztec. It could be medieval France. It could be Australia. It could be Atlantis. It could be anything you want. Mm-hmm. In my own home campaign, it was set on a fantasy version of the real Earth. It was an island in the Mediterranean. It was the fantasy version of Corsica.
Okay.
And so it was set in the early 1300s. So Isle of the Unknown in my campaign was set in a mythical version of Earth's medieval past.
Right.
But that's just me. It would work equally well for any campaign set in any time.
Cool. Okay, I got one last question.
Sure.
You gonna come to North Texas RPG Con? Possibly, maybe.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Bad.
Yeah, my life is such. I'm a real estate agent, and I'm kind of like a fireman. My job is kind of like a fireman. Okay. Most of the time, I have nothing to do. But suddenly, I have a $5,000 commission riding on me making sure that my client signs something and faxes it back in the next 24 hours.
Okay.
So that's why I can't really, leave home too much, because I can lose hugely on just, gotcha. I missed it, yeah.
Gotcha. You're a better man than I, Gunga Din. Gotcha. Well, it's a year away. I just thought I'd ask anyway. It'd be great if we could, get some players and have you go through Carcosa with them or something.
Oh, I would love it, but I'm afraid it's just not possible.
Okay, well, change your mind. Let us know.
Oh, I will, yeah.
Geoffrey, thank you for talking to us. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
Oh, sure. And that's about it, folks, this week. Save or die, can you make the save, all that stuff they say. Good night, everybody.